Max Verstappen has always been a force on the track, but now it looks like he might be flexing serious muscle off the track too. The F1 world is still in shock over Christian Horner's sudden exit from Red Bull. And here's the part that's hard to ignore. Some insiders believe Max, along with his father Jose, played a key role in that decision. Yeah, really, what started as whispers in the paddock has now turned into a full-blown theory, with none other than Martin Brundle backing the idea that the Verstappen family may have pulled the strings behind Horner's departure. Think about it. Christian Horner wasn't just a team principal, he was part of Red Bull's DNA. He'd been there since day one, guiding them from the Jaguar takeover to championship glory. So for him to be suddenly axed mid-season with no build-up, no farewell, and no warning, that doesn't happen unless something major is going on behind the scenes. And when the top brass at Red Bull decided to cut ties so abruptly, you have to ask who benefits from that move the most. Well, Martin Brundle didn't pull any punches. He said Max's camp has been lobbying in hand grenades for months. In other words, stirring up pressure inside the team. And here's the kicker: Brundle said it's been pretty relentless. That tells you this wasn't some last-minute drama. It's been boiling beneath the surface for a while. And Jose Verstappen, he hasn't exactly been subtle either. He's openly questioned whether Horner is the right man to lead Red Bull into the future. Not exactly the vote of confidence you'd expect from your star driver's dad. Now, we can't say for certain what went on behind closed doors, but one thing's crystal clear: the Verstappen name carries enormous weight within Red Bull right now. 4 world titles, dozens of race wins, and a team that simply doesn't work without Max behind the wheel. So, could he have used that leverage to force a change at the top? Let me ask you this: do you think Max Verstappen is starting to have too much power at Red Bull? Is this just a natural progression for a once-in-a-generation talent? Or is the team in danger of being ruled by one man? Drop a yes or nitrogen monoxide in the comments below, and if you're loving this kind of deep dive, make sure to subscribe. We're pushing hard toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Now let's dig into what was really happening inside Red Bull leading up to this chaos, because this wasn't just about personal beef, this was a full-blown internal war, and honestly, no one saw it coming. Behind the scenes, the cracks were starting to show long before Horner got the boot. Red Bull was beginning to falter, not just politically, but technically too. And in a team where winning is everything, failure starts conversations that nobody wants to have. Let's start with the car. Since the 2024 season kicked off, Max Verstappen has been driving what many are calling a second-rate machine. And when you've got a guy who's carried you to 4 consecutive titles, that's not going to fly. The upgrades haven't worked. His once trusted engineering allies, guys like Washington and Bolo, have delivered a car that just can't compete at the front. That's a disaster, especially when you remember that in 2024, Max scored 75% of the team's points. And this year, all but 7 of them. So yeah, when Red Bull stopped being dominant, pressure mounted. And when Max starts struggling, it sends shockwaves. He's the team's performance. And when he's unhappy, the whole structure begins to tremble. According to Brundle, this is exactly where the Verstappen camp started to tighten the screws. Jose Verstappen, in particular, made his views very public. And just days before Horner was fired, he was involved in a heated confrontation with him after the British Grand Prix. Jose didn't hold back. Reports say he even warned Horner that the pressure was going to stay on until something changed. If that's true, then it paints a pretty clear picture. This wasn't a snap decision, it was a build-up. Max and Jose weren't just reacting emotionally. They were sending a message: either the team evolves or we walk. And that's where things get dangerous. Because if a driver, no matter how brilliant, can dictate who stays and who goes at the top of a world-class F1 team, then the power balance is totally off. But here's what I want to know from you: do you believe a driver and his father should have this kind of influence over team leadership? Is it fair game, or is this a case of power being abused? Comment below and tell me your take. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps push this video to more fans like you who live and breathe Formula One. So now we've seen the warning signs and internal pressure, but what if all of this wasn't just about friction or frustration? What if it was part of a bigger plan, a calculated power move to reshape Red Bull from the inside out, with Max Verstappen at the center of it all? Let's not sugarcoat it. Red Bull without Horner is a different animal. The man was more than just a boss, he was a pillar of the team. Removing him isn't just trimming the fat, it's gutting the foundation. Which leads us to a theory gaining serious traction: that this was a strategic reset. One designed to give Max even more influence. We're not just talking about calling the shots on setup or car development, we're talking about control over the team's identity. There are whispers that Red Bull might even be open to giving Max title sponsor leverage. Imagine that. A Formula One team named in part after a driver. It's wild, but if any driver could make that happen today, it's Verstappen. He's that valuable. He's that irreplaceable. And Red Bull knows it. But here's where things get a little uncomfortable. This isn't the first time a team faced the risk of becoming a one-man show. Remember when Lewis Hamilton was in his prime at Mercedes? There were people who thought he'd retire there, win even more titles, and maybe even become the face of the entire organization. But Toto Wolff drew a line. He said it clearly: no one, not even a 7-time world champion, could be bigger than the 2,000 people working at the factory. That's leadership. And Lewis, he respected that. He left with grace, heading off to Ferrari without burning bridges. Now compare that to what's happening here. Max is still at Red Bull, but it looks like the team is bending over backward to keep him happy, even if it means sacrificing someone like Horner. And that raises a serious question. Is this the start of a Verstappen-era Red Bull, built around his preferences, his people, and his power? Or is it just short-term chaos caused by deeper problems? Because let's be real, if the team is willing to let go of one of the most successful team principles in history, just to hold on to their star driver, what message does that send to everyone else in the garage? So, here's a quick poll for you. Would you support a Red Bull team Verstappen, where Max gets more control than ever? Or do you think that's taking it way too far? Let me know down in the comments. And if you're enjoying the video so far, why not hit that subscribe button? We're growing fast here on Fast News F1, and you could be one of the first 1,000 fans helping us break through. Alright, now let's flip the lens and talk about Christian Horner himself. After all the speculation, drama, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering, he's out of the picture, at least for now. But don't think for a second that he's done with Formula One. The man might be sidelined, but he's not out of the game. For starters, Red Bull will reportedly have to pay Horner a massive compensation package somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million. That's not small change. But here's the real kicker. He's contractually barred from joining another F1 team until January 1st, 2026. That means Horner won't be able to influence the grid during the first year of the new regulations. In a way, Red Bull not only removed him, they neutralized him for one of the most critical transition periods in recent F1 history. So, what's next for him? Well, there are already whispers, loud ones, that Horner could return to the sport as a team owner. To names that keep popping up are Ferrari and Alpine. And while Ferrari would be the glamorous choice, it's Alpine that might make more sense. Why? Because Horner has a close relationship with Flavio Briatore, the man quietly pulling the strings behind the scenes in the French team. Flavio isn't technically the team principal, but he's still the shot caller. And pairing him with Horner could be a complete restructuring move to revive Alpine's long-stalled ambitions. Now, let's not forget Horner wasn't forced out over poor performance. This was politics, plain and simple. He was proven innocent in court regarding the allegations that swirled earlier this year. So, whatever went down, it wasn't about guilt, it was about power. And that makes his next move even more intriguing. A man with nothing to lose and something to prove, that's dangerous. But here's a thought that might sting a bit for Verstappen fans. What if this whole situation backfires? What if, by pushing Horner out, Max and Joes have created a long-term enemy who knows Red Bull inside and out? A guy with 2 decades of experience, deep connections, and now maybe a grudge. So here's what I want to ask you. If you were in Christian Horner's shoes right now, what would you do? Would you take the money and walk away from the chaos forever? Or would you come back stronger and try to build something that could challenge Red Bull head-on? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I love reading your theories. And if you're new here, don't miss out. Subscribe now and join the conversation as we follow the most dramatic F1 season in years. So after everything we've covered, the power struggle, the Horner fallout, and the whispers of a Verstappen-dominated Red Bull, there's still one huge question left on the table. What does all of this mean for Max's future with Mercedes? Because remember, just a few months ago, the big story was that Max Verstappen might actually leave Red Bull for Mercedes, and for a moment, it looked plausible. The car wasn't performing, the internal politics were exploding, and Toto Wolff had made it clear he'd be open to having Max behind the wheel if the timing was right. But here's the twist. After seeing how this whole Red Bull situation unfolded, would Mercedes still want him? Martin Brundle made a great point. He said that if Verstappen really did play a role in getting Horner sacked, and especially if it came with behind-the-scenes pressure and internal sabotage, then that could raise red flags for any other team thinking of signing him. Because while talent is king in Formula One, no team wants a driver who could turn on the leadership if things don't go his way. Let's be honest, Lewis Hamilton, during his time at Mercedes, also had moments of frustration. He wasn't always happy with the car, but he didn't go behind Wolff's back. He didn't threaten ultimatums. He just made his case, and when it was time for a change, he walked away on his own terms, quiet, professional, and graceful. So if Max does end up staying at Red Bull after all this chaos, and all signs point to that, it'll be clear that the team made sacrifices just to keep him. The scales have tipped. He's not just their top driver anymore. He's their top priority. And that means his power, his voice, and his influence inside the team will only grow stronger from here on out. But is that a good thing? Or is Red Bull setting itself up for a future where no decision gets made without Verstappen's approval? That's the story we're walking into now. A Red Bull without Christian Horner. A Verstappen family with more leverage than ever. And a 2026 engine regulation shakeup right around the corner. There are still so many questions left to answer, but one thing is for sure. This is not the same Red Bull racing team we've known for the last decades. So what do you think? Will Red Bull thrive without Horner, or is this the beginning of the end for their dominance in Formula One? Let's get that conversation going in the comments below. And hey, if you've made it this far, I want to thank you. You clearly love F1 as much as I do, and if you haven't yet, now's the perfect time to subscribe. We're pushing hard to hit 1,000 subscribers here on Fast News F1, and every single one of you makes a difference. Hit that bell too, so you don't miss the next twist in this unbelievable saga.